Madam Chair, I rise in strong support of H.R. 963, the FAIR Act, which prohibits the enforcement of forced arbitration clauses in consumer, employment, civil rights, and antitrust disputes. Buried deep within the fine print of almost every contract consumers sign are clauses that deprive hardworking Americans and small businesses of their day in court when they attempt to hold corporations accountable for breaking the law. We heard from lots of small businesses in support of this bill, no one claiming that they were required to have forced arbitration in order to remain successful. Forced arbitration protects systemic wrongdoing. Everyone is always allowed to have arbitration if they want to voluntarily once a dispute arises. This forces people to give up their right to have their claims heard, and most Americans don't even know they've given up that right because they're forced to sign contracts, and the fine print is a provision where you're waiving that right. When you get a phone, when you get cable, when you have internet service. This outrageous practice, as my colleague from Florida just described, is nothing short of a corporate takeover of our nation's system of justice, and it affects almost every single American. This private arbitration that's very expensive, that lasts a very long time, also lacks the procedural safeguards of our justice system. It's not subjected to oversight. It doesn't have a judge. It doesn't have a jury. It's not bound by laws even passed by Congress or the states in which it occurs. But it's become a requirement of everyday life for tens of millions of consumers and workers who have to surrender their rights to hold wrongdoers accountable. These provisions require people to give up the right to have their claims heard in a court of law and to have that remedy that will prevent the wrongdoer from continuing. Think about someone bringing a family member, a loved one into a nursing home who doesn't have the opportunity to negotiate taking out that provision because someone they love is in desperate need of care. Or someone who, and I'll give you a real example, someone who's defending our country. The case of Lieutenant Commander Kevin Zeiber, who testified in support of the FAIR Act in the last Congress. He served in the U.S. Navy Reserves since 2008. He was activated multiple times to serve in Afghanistan and Iraq. On the last day of his employment, they had a party for him, had a cake the shape of a flag. They celebrated him, and moments later, he was fired. And when he said to his employer, "You can't fire me. There's a federal statute that protects me," they said, sorry for you. You agreed to forced arbitration. You waived away your rights in your employment contract. And in the fine print, sure enough, there it was. And he testified at the hearing in 2019 that his case was in arbitration 7 years later. Nothing fast about that. And sadly, he said, and I quote, "This happens every day across America, not only to service members and veterans whose rights are violated, but also to working people and consumers of all backgrounds," end quote. The FAIR Act will ensure that what happened to Lieutenant Zeiber and what happens to millions of other hardworking Americans never happens again. Let's restore justice to our justice system by getting rid of these pernicious, horrible, unfair provisions. And as I conclude, I just want to thank Congressman Johnson for his extraordinary leadership. He has been fighting to try to free the hardworking Americans and consumers and people who fight for our country from the bondage of forced arbitration clauses. And finally, we can do that today. Vote yes. Vote for the FAIR Act. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.